Your worship, I do see we are now live, so.
Okay, thank you very much, Nina. And again, I think we got about a minute to go now. And the only person that I don't see yet is Councillor Di Lorenzo. So we haven't, oh, I see him there now. Councillor Di Lorenzo has joined us. So everyone is here now. So we'll get underway very momentarily. And the clerk does advise me that it is 7 o'clock now, so I would call this council meeting to order of October the 19th. And I would ask members of council and ladies and gentlemen to stand and join with me in our national anthem and a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. Under agenda announcements and amendments, there's a bit of housekeeping that has to take order. So our clerk is going to take a few minutes and bring everybody right up to total speed with the agenda. So, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So 3 announcements for this evening's meeting. On October 15th, a revised agenda was posted and distributed with an amendment to Purchasing Report Cores 5620, the inclusion of Staff Report Cores Safe Restart Phase 2 funding, and an amendment to the General Signing Bylaw 86/2020. The second announcement is that staff received a delegation request from Mr. Jeff Jansen following the registration deadline and publishing of the revised agenda on October 15th. He would like to speak to consent item 9, staff report DS 4320, and item for consideration 5, staff report DS 4420. Should council pass a motion to allow Mr. Jansen to speak on these items, he'll be added to the delegation section of the agenda. For council's deliberation on these items, consent item 9 will be pulled and included as item for consent number 5, and the following agenda items will be renumbered. The third announcement is with respect to the public meetings. So later on today's agenda, we have 2 statutory public meetings under the Planning Act scheduled for a proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment by Milton Thompson Road Development Group, a proposed plan of subdivision and amendment to the zoning bylaw by Milcon 3 Developments Limited. During the course of the live meeting, members of the public who wish to make a request to speak on one of these public meetings can contact via phone only by dialing our dedicated phone number, or they can email townclerk@milton.ca. The phone number is 1-866-511-0021, and staff will provide step-by-step instructions on how to enter and participate in the meeting via phone. Staff will work to assist each of the callers for the public meetings, and will start and end each of the calls in order they're received. These instructions will be provided again at the point in the agenda that we'll be holding the public meetings.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I know that you and I had discussed there was minutes that went out there, the in-camera minutes, so you might just want to mention to council what their wish may be on that. So, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent item number 4 was distributed to members of council prior to this meeting. Unfortunately, they were not published or provided with the agenda earlier this week or later last week.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So with that understanding, members of council, I know that was fairly lengthy. Does any member of council need any clarification on any of the points that our clerk just mentioned? I'm not seeing any hands go up, so I believe, Madam Clerk, that is fairly clear. So members of council, what I will need now, and I know Councillor Hamid and Councillor Cluett, both of you signed agreed to sign a number of the resolutions. And I have Councillor Hamid as a mover and Councillor Cluett as a seconder for what I'm about to read. But first of all, before that, I will need your concurrence if you want it to be included on this resolution. And really what it would read, be it resolved that council hear from Jeff Jansen to speak with respect to staff report DS 043-20 and DS-44-20. So again, Councillor Hamid, I go to you as movender. Is that okay? I'm getting a nod that that's okay. And Councillor Cluett, attaching your name as seconder. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's been properly moved and seconded now. And you've heard me read the resolution. Is there any questions with regards to this motion to hear from Mr. Jensen? I'm not seeing any hands go up there, so I will assume that it's unanimous by members of council that we hear from Mr. Jensen. So with that, Nina, if you could bring Mr. Jensen on. And one of the things, members of council, that I and we intend to do on the agenda review with the clerk earlier on today, separate out both of these items. We'll deal with item number 9 under consent first of all, and dispense with that. And then, of course, we'll deal with the consent items. And then after we deal with the consent items, we will then go to item number 5 under items for consideration, again, to hear from Mr. Jensen. And again, that seems somewhat complicated, but I think we have it figured out to make sure that everyone has his or her just say. So also included in that is a motion moved by Councillor Hamid and second by Councillor Cluett. Be it resolved that consent items numbers 1 to 8 be approved. And we'll get to that in just a few moments, because I know that I have at least 2 or 3 of them to be pulled out as well. I believe it's 5, 7, and 8 to be pulled out and dealt with separately. So we'll just hold off on that one. So, okay. And again, I apologize for some of the confusion, Madam Clerk. Yeah, I'm sorry. The clerk mentions to me that I should get any disclosure that any one of us might have before we move on with the agenda. Has anyone any disclosures? And that's important to be given that opportunity. So no one I don't see with their hand up with any disclosure. So we will move ahead. So okay, the clerk is suggesting maybe we deal with the consent items first, and dealing with Councillor Chalner. I believe that you had number 5 pulled out. So if you want to proceed with number 5.
Thanks, Your Worship. So there's a couple of things here that I just wanted to discuss with Glenn. The first one, Your Worship, under our expenses as mayor and council, we're $30,000 over on the light item that I thought might have been decided in January of 2020. So kind of curious as to why that is where it is. It's, like I say, $30,000. And Glenn, the second one is development engineering, and there's various fees that are over $200,000 over the planned budget. I'm kind of curious about that as well.
Glenn?
Through the mayor. So the additional approximately 30,000 related to council and mayor, I believe that goes back to the last benchmarking exercise and just the timing of those results. If you remember when it was first done, at the time there was a need to wait for a further update from the comparators. So when that exercise occurred, I believe the final results were finalized very late in the year last year. As a result, the budget numbers when they were finalized did not reflect the final outcome of that. So there was a notification to council, I believe, late in 2019 as to the results, and the actual budget adjustment for that will occur through this year's process. So we've just been managing the variance between the two as part of the overall variance management throughout the year. The second line related to development services, I've just got to pull up in front of myself to see the exact order of magnitude and just which direction that one was going. We have seen, and there's a couple different revenue streams in those areas. It's been a very good year with respect to planning application fees, and I'm just sorry, I'm just not seeing the exact line item here, but in the development application fees, we have seen
development engineering, and I believe it relates, Glenn, to expenses related to consulting.
Okay, yeah. Under the purchase services, if you can, let me
That's
take
right.
that one back. Yeah, I see the 206,000 that you're referring to.
Right.
I will get a specific answer and come back with that if that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Your worship, the larger picture that I kind of want to ask Glenn about relates to where we end up, and it appears that things are a little more difficult than they were 30 to 60 days ago in terms of how we're going to land. And we've got November and December. And I realize, Glenn, it's very difficult to anticipate, where the budget is going to rest by December 31st. We've had a conversation at the last council with respect to attempting a soft landing and the $2.8 million and whether or not we're going to need all of it this year. It appears based on your report that we may need all of it this year. And so, my question is then what do we do next year? And I also, this kind of refers, Glenn, as well to staff report number 4 about phase 2.
Yes.
And, what if there isn't a phase 2? What if the province decides that its financial situation is such where there can't be a phase 2, or we don't qualify for some reason? I'm assuming that you're thinking about worst case scenarios here.
We're looking at a variety of scenarios. I would say that there is some positive information that we're starting to see now. We alluded to it a little bit in that second report you mentioned about safe restart. We are in the middle right now of the comprehensive review of the variance and the budget for 2020 and where we think we're going to land. Although we don't have the results yet, we're still working with departments to really narrow down the specific numbers. Anecdotally, the specific examples that I'm hearing and the trend that we're hearing through staff is that the savings that we were anticipating are turning out to be larger than what we were projecting in the numbers you see in front of you here. So some of the mitigation measures that have been taken have been more successful than we were estimating in what you see here. So that's obviously a positive for the town, and it will further strengthen our position. It also probably further emphasizes or reinforces the recommendations in that second report later on the agenda about the safe restart, because we are more likely to have a surplus, and actually to have a surplus probably larger than the one that is forecasted in front of you in this report based on the information that we had at this time. And that will set us up for 2021 in a better position. The other numbers that you'll see later on are our first estimates of what that 2021 pressure is going to be. And we're looking at right now, based on a scenario, somewhere in the order of $2.8 million potentially of net pressure, with about 1.4 million of options to mitigate identified so far. So the surpluses that we're seeing this year, and especially the money we don't have to use from reserve because of the $2.8 million, if we are looking at pressures in that order of magnitude next year, we are actually setting ourselves up quite well to get ready for that. And we'll still, same as this year, pursue more mitigation opportunities to help reduce that as we go, just as we're starting to see now through this Q3 variance review.
Councillor Chandler?
Yeah, so let's talk then a little bit about next year and the first 6 months. And I guess leading into that is, are you seeing a trend in terms of building permit revenues coming close to what we anticipated they'd be in the last couple of months of this year?
Yeah, so with the development revenues, there are a couple different streams that are worth noting. The budget numbers right now for building permit revenue specifically, it's actually showing to be the strongest year we've had in a very long time. In the initial estimates we have for next year. If you keep in mind that building permit revenue section is essentially self-funded, there's no tax implication of those. We have in recent times had a need to draw on that stabilization reserve. There still is a balance in that reserve, but preliminary estimates for next year for that area suggest that we'll be replenishing a good portion of the funding that's been drawn from that if the forecasts come to fruition. We are also seeing, as noted this year, there have been some positive revenue trends in other areas of application fees. So that is certainly helping our position this year as well, and helping offset some of the pressures in other areas for the moment.
Last question, Your Worship. What is your expectation for coming back to council to give us a sense of how you want to close the year in terms of the various funds you use to balance the budget?
So that will come up in the November council meeting. We are going to have the detailed outcome of our September variance review for council at that time. So it'll be a natural time to come back to how much of that projected 2.8 million we suspect we may need to use. And if there are other measures, what those may be. Council may not need to make a final decision then, but certainly we can bring the information forward and get a sense of where we expect to be, at least when we come back then with the final numbers later.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other member of council, anything further on item number 5 in the consent agenda? If not, we will move on to item number 7 that's been drawn out, and Councillor Chandler and Councillor Cluett had wished that drawn out. So Councillor Chandler, go ahead on 7.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was happy to see this report. I've been getting some feedback over the last few months, and I think it was really timely to have this discussion. There are a couple things, Your Worship, that I just want to make sure I'm clear on, and it's around eligibility criteria, and it's with respect to the new eligibility criteria. And the third bullet, Your Worship, from the top that starts, must demonstrate respect and tolerance, et cetera, et cetera. And it talks about influencing government policy or promoting religious beliefs. And Your Worship, I think that unless Troy or Megan has an explanation that I'm not seeing, would it be wise to also consider political beliefs or political entities? And specifically, I had residents raising with me why we're raising the flags of foreign countries at Town Hall. And, it's an important question because that responsibility really rests with the government of Canada, not municipalities. They know who we have relationships with that are good versus bad more so than we do. And I'm assuming that the reason why we have particular involvements with certain countries or people from those countries originally, it really relates to culture as opposed to politics. But I'm kind of curious, Your Worship, as to what we're dealing with in the criteria that deals with political beliefs or political entities.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chandler. And again, I know there's been a fair bit of input into this by a lot of individuals, including other municipalities and some of their processes and some of the ways that they handle it. So going to flip that over to the clerk there to deal with that as well. So, Madam Clerk.
So thank you, Councillor. Thank you for the question. With respect to this policy, this is really just formalizing what our executive services staff are currently doing, and happy to see that we're including an application process and getting some timelines included in there. But under eligibility criteria, it is noted proclamations will not be issued for the following political parties or political organizations as the second part of that. So I think with these executive services do receive them and take these into consideration, and also look at the other bullets as far as respect and tolerance and fostering a sense of community as well. So taking all that into account, that is the process as it currently stands. It's just formalizing it within this policy, but political parties or political organizations are specifically listed within there.
Your worship, I see that bullet, and my comments around that were to give consideration actually to include foreign governments, because municipalities in Canada have no jurisdiction with respect to recognizing countries outside of, or any entities outside of their jurisdiction. And I think we need to be as clear as possible. I think that we ought to encourage recognizing cultures and celebrating them. That's what Canada is. But flags don't often represent the culture. They represent the political entity. And that's the issue. And it's not an issue that is, that we've had to deal with until recently. And certainly it is an issue that other municipalities have dealt with, and they don't fly the flags of other countries on their flagpoles. They leave that to the government of Canada to deal with, which is where it should rest. So, Your Worship, I have no issue as long as it's understood that political organizations also means countries.
Okay, Madam Clerk, over to you on that point about foreign countries. Yeah. Okay, now I have a list here: Councillor Cluett, Councillor Ali, and Councillor Malboof in that order. But I think, Madam Clerk, the point that Councillor Chandler raises with regards to, if I'm clear on it, he has no issues with it, but he raises the concern. So it's heard loud and clear, and again, it'll be at the will of the majority of council as to how they wish to deal with it. So, Councillor Chandler, you still have the floor.
I'm finished, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cluett.
Thank you, Your Worship. And like I said, this is also a timely thing to report, because we have been seeing over the course of time a number of increased requests by organizations, places like the United Way and a number of other organizations to celebrate certain events, certain days. World Autism Awareness Day. I know, Your Worship, we have raised the flag a number of times at town hall, as well as the pride flag that we've recently been doing the last few years as well. So one of the things I was wondering if we could put in, and as part of the policy, is that if we have a schedule of events that are happening, and I know that from time to time the calendar does fill up, if members of council, through the weekly email updates that we get when we get documents forwarded to us, if members of council could be informed of the schedule of those events. There's some of them that have gone by that we have not been aware of, that we would have liked to have attended and shown our support. So I don't know if that's something that has to be added into the policy, or if that's just something that we could use as a practice going forward. But thanks very much again to staff for preparing this report.
Yeah, and Councillor Cluett, I think that's an excellent idea. And I don't know if a resolution or an amendment to the motion is needed, but I think it's just taken as staff direction. I see the clerk and the CEO indicating that will be done. Councillor Cluett, anything further?
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ali?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to congratulate staff on bringing this modified version to council. I know a lot of requests come in through your office, Your Worship, and your staff have been excellent in managing them, but it kind of makes their life easier when we modify the bylaw. Now, I would like to go back to the comments made earlier by one of my colleagues with regards to why are we raising flags of the countries and comments about culture and political parties. As an immigrant, it offends me a great deal to hear these comments. The purpose of raising flags for me as an immigrant to see that is to feel proud as a Canadian who left everything behind to join this great nation. I feel myself represented when I see that flag go up there. So that is why we do it. And I feel proud to be a Miltonian when we do it. And I do not appreciate the comments that were made earlier. I would like to say this on record. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Melbuff.
Sorry, Councillor Malbuff, you just have to
Yeah,
unmute.
okay. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to very briefly echo a lot of the comments that were made by Councillor Chalanar. I have no problem recognizing, raising the flags of organizations, committees, groups that are associated with Milton. But again, raising flags of other countries is not within our jurisdiction. That is a federal issue, and it should be left with the federal government. We raised a flag not too long ago of a country, and I received a couple of calls with people upset that we were raising the flags of a dictatorship. So, really that's above our pay grade, to put it mildly. So I would like to see it when we're looking at this, the flag raising, that we do not raise the flags of any other foreign country or government. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I thank you very much. And again, I have Councillor Hamid next. And I see Councillor Ali has got her hand up, and I'll recognize her in a few minutes as a second-time speaker after I've heard from everyone if they wish to be a first-time speaker. So with that, Councillor Hamid.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, about the sentence that says political parties and political organizations, how do we, I mean, I understand political parties, but how do we define what a political organization is and who defines that? Because that could be a very gray area.
Certainly, Madam Clerk, it's certainly not going to be me that'll define that, but Madam Clerk, and again, this isn't the first community that's been able to deal with this, and I don't know what the common thread is, Madam Clerk, with other municipalities on the point that Councillor Hamid raises. What the clerk and the CAO is, I believe, might be suggesting, and I didn't think we'd get into this in any detail like this evening. What they're hinting at is, everybody with their input on possibly pulling it from the agenda, coming back. We're just trying to formalize something, is what we're doing, at least at this point in time, anyway. So it's just a thought for council at this point in time. It's on the agenda and it's been properly moved and seconded to be incorporated in the consent items, and I'm well aware of that. So, but Councillor Hamid, back to your question.
Yeah, I didn't hear the response to the question, but it doesn't have to be answered right now. I can take it. I can take it offline as well. I was just curious to see how we define what a political organization is, because a lot of in some cases, some of the charitable organizations are considered involved in politics by some members of the community. So I just wanted to understand how we draw the boundary and define it. But it doesn't have to be answered right now. I can take the response later. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And again, I'm not so sure whether the CEO or the clerk in this instance wants to try and interpret that question. So it's bigger than I think that for those two at this moment, that's for sure. But Madam Clerk, on that point, are you suggesting that it be withdrawn at this point in time? Yeah, the clerk is suggesting that we withdraw it at this time and have everybody's input on and bring it back at hopefully maybe the next council meeting. So with that, Councillor Mead, you still had the floor. And for the second time, Councillor Ali, keeping in mind that it may be withdrawn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify the comment about cultures. A country is made up of many, many cultures, and those cultures are united under one flag. For example, the Pakistani culture that I belong to has provinces that are Punjabi, there are Sindhi, there are Balochi, there are Pathan. There's the Indian country. Under that flag, there are 28 languages and states that are united under one flag. That goes for every country and every nation. In Canada, there are so many cultures in Canada, so to speak. So, and let's not even forget the indigenous culture. So I don't understand this whole argument about culture. And who are these people? Are they 4? Are they 5? Are they 10? I'm telling you, that's not the majority of Milton. Majority of Milton appreciates diversity and sees themselves represented in their flag. Thank you.
I thank you for that. Now, I'm going to divert here. As you heard me mention there before, I'll go to first-time speakers first. So Councillor Rick DiLorenzo, he's a first-time speaker, and then Councillor Malboof, and then Councillor Challoner in that order. Councillor DiLorenzo, go ahead.
I just want to say if the report stays on the table and if there's any amendment changing it so we can't raise flags of other nations, I would be not in favor of that amendment. I don't think the town of Milton's entering into international diplomacy or federal politics by raising a flag of another nation. Many other municipalities do this, including Toronto and other municipalities near us. Many of the other municipalities have rules where maybe a flag of another nation can only be raised once a year, or they have some rules around how often that occurs. But this is more of a cultural and symbolic flag raising that members of the community, members of the municipality in a majority want, in a majority or in favor of it, in my opinion. And I would not be in favor of amendment saying that we can no longer raise the flags of other nations if requested by a group within Milton and approved by our flag raising policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Malboof and then Councillor Challoner.
No, I was just going to raise my hand to support that it be sent back to staff to look at again, and so that councillors can provide some input and maybe get more information before we have to decide.
Okay, I'll take that as a verbal motion. Now, of course, at the appropriate time, I'll be looking for a seconder on it too. But before that, Councillor Challoner.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll second that, Councillor Malboof's motion. I want to be clear that it's not a question of that, culture versus politics. For me, it's a question of protocol. And I think the best place for staff to look is, in fact, in Ottawa, Global Affairs, the Government of Canada. There is a protocol that all of us are to follow with respect to this. And, when people of note pass away, when the flag should be lowered to half-mast, there is a proper protocol in this country. It's been in place for 150 years. It's worked very well. And that's what should be followed. And that's what everybody should follow. And that's my point. Very supportive of diverse cultures, as I said at the beginning when I talked about this. But within a national context, flags mean a different thing than cultures. And flags represent the politics of a country typically. And that's what the standard is nationally. This is how Ottawa looks at flag raisings, and that's the protocol we should follow. And I agree with Councillor Malboof and staff, send it back, take another look. But I would turn to Ottawa for direction on this.
And we will certainly do that and look for anybody and everybody else's input on this before it comes back. I don't have any further speakers on this item here, but it has been properly moved and seconded that item number 7 be withdrawn from the consent agenda to come back at a later date. And now, Madam Clerk, I'm not sure when I say a later date, I suggested next meeting, but I don't want to rush it either. So whatever is appropriate within a reasonable time frame is what I'm going to suggest. So members of council, you have heard that verbal motion that item number 7 be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Unless I see a hand go up like this, I will assume that majority of you are in favor of that resolution. If I see a hand go up, I know you oppose it. So calling the vote, I don't see any hands going up. So it will be back in a reasonable time frame. So members of council, thank you very much for that input. Now moving on to item number 8, Councillor Challoner and Councillor Best, and this deals with the street name bank. Councillor Challoner.
Yes, Your Worship. I appreciate the recommendations. I would recommend, and there's a discussion about this actually when Heritage Milton was being discussed at the beginning of this term. I've had some discussion with staff on some names over the last 18 months, but not all. And I would recommend that that staff reach out to Heritage Milton on a more formal basis with respect to these names in future. And if they so choose, also include Milton Historical Society, because there is important historical information that needs to be included for council's benefit and for the record. And both those organizations have the ability to provide that background so that, we're getting that important second look.
Councillor Challoner, on that point, I always thought that was the case being done. I know at one point in time that was being done, but I'm not sure if that's not being done now or not. But I certainly concur with your thoughts on that regard for sure. And that can be done and will be done. I don't know if we've slipped back on that or not, because I always look for their input in the past. So Councillor Best on number 8.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Challoner's request there. I was having something similar. Also, if there's anything in the rural area, to also consult the Nasqueya Historical Society. My other request to staff, which I've discussed previously with them, that on our website, if it could be updated when we have new names added to the street list, that we have some history or some maybe 1 or 2 sentences about what the street's named for. I have a number of questions from new residents asking, where'd this name come from? Because some of them are unusual names for new residents. So this way it explains some of the history and also educates people in the community and its history.
Certainly concur with that. Councillor Best, it's not only probably newer residents, even a resident like me that's been around for a day or two, there's some of those names that I wonder where it come from as well. But I've not done, and I know that is probably out there for us to do the research and why that particular name might have come up. And they don't have to necessarily be a person's name, could be some other name there as well. But it's curious to know, and I think it's always wise to know why something was named the way it was. So I don't have any further on item number 8. So we will move forward. And again, with number 7 being withdrawn from there. And the last item under consent items is number 9, and that's to be delegated as well. And Mr. Jensen, so Nina, if you could bring on Mr. Jensen, and I'd remind anyone that's delegating that there's a 5-minute limit. And in this particular case, we're going to deal with item number 9 under consent first, and then we'll get away from that, and then we'll go another 5 minutes on number 5 under items for consideration. So that's the way that this is going to proceed. So with that, Nina, if you could bring on Mr. Jensen, please, on consent item number 9.
Mayor, I brought over Mr. Jansen. Mr. Jansen, you just have to unmute and turn on your video whenever you're ready. Mr. Jansen, are you hearing us? Maybe third time's the charm. Mr. Jansen, I've brought you over. If you would like to speak, you just have to turn on your sound and your video. Mr. Jansen?
Bueller.
So your worship, I think we actually do have Mr. Jansen's contact information. If you give us a second, we might be able to get in touch with him alternatively to see if we can assist.
Hello?
Just one second.
Anina?
Oh, there we go. Hi, Mr. Jansen.
I'm Paul. I'm new to all this stuff. Sorry.
That's okay. We can hear you. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
See video? You can go ahead. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so good evening, Mr. Mayor Krantz and councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Greatly appreciate it. We have some concerns about the some issues with the RLD new bylaw. We are very supportive of the new bylaw, and we feel it is appropriate for the downtown core, and we do support it. We do an average of about 20 projects a year throughout the Milton area between new homes, additions, and renovations in the architectural side. Our concerns are to do with not allowing any variances to be applied for if the new bylaw comes into motion and gets passed. It is very concerning for us due to the fact with all our clientele that we work with in the downtown Milton area. Basically, we have one concern which we brought to attention of town staff. We have a couple projects that are in the site plan approval process that will require a variance, and under the direction of town staff, I believe that these will be reviewed under the old bylaw RLD. So we're hoping that will be somehow written either in this bylaw, that these will be allowed to be reviewed under the old bylaw. Our concern with no variance for 2 years, we asked council to really look at what I'm going to speak about tonight, and we're looking to have the moratorium waived for 2 years. And I'm going to explain to you quickly why, and it's very important. First of all, a homeowner taxpayer in the town of Milton, I believe, should have the right to apply for a minor variance. It doesn't mean that they're going to get granted the minor variance. It's a process they're allowed to go through the Planning Act, and we feel taking that right away for 2 years could be very detrimental. There's a lot of people right now that are doing a lot of home improvements, additions. A lot of people are working from home, so you're going to see a large increase, I believe, in the next couple of years of home renovations, additions, where people are going to work from home, and will trigger a lot more development. When you go for a minor variance in the town of Milton, an addition, sometimes the existing house is legal non-conforming. So that existing house will need a variance. So to tell a homeowner they have to wait 2 years or go through a whole different process and expense, I think is very hard to explain to a current homeowner in the Milton that wants to improve their current home. Variances can be triggered by numerous things in town of Milton. We've come across where they've taken road allowances on streets in Milton, which have triggered variances, an easement, a driveway, vegetation, where they want to alter the location of this addition due to vegetation that they don't want to cut down on a property. These could all trigger minor variances on an addition, even on new homes. For an example, just to be quick, lot coverage is based on 25% at 700 meters squared. So a 2-story home would be 3,700 square feet. Basically not allowing somebody to come for a variance on a bungalow, because a bungalow, you're still allowed the same lot coverage. So we have a lot of retired people moving back to Milton, or people with disabilities, to tell them they can't come for minor variance or go through a whole different process, and time consuming and delays could be detrimental to a decision if they're going to head and build a new home in Milton or renovate or add. The minor variance moratorium, if we ask for the delay or the moratorium waive for 2 years, like I said, we're very supportive of the new bylaw. Allowing people to have a minor variance through this new process does not going to stop the monster home, which is, the real direction of this new bylaw. We feel that the residents want to improve their homes, so we feel that waiving the moratorium will allow these people to do that without being penalized. Unfortunately, the town of Milton, when you have an existing dwelling and you're doing an addition, home improvement, the existing house that doesn't comply to the current bylaw does not get grandfathered. So it does require a variance. Again, we really suggest strongly that council looks at this waiving for 2 years of the moratorium on the new bylaw to allow residents the opportunity to still apply for a variance without a delay or an extra process involved. There is no guarantee on getting a minor variance. It does go in front of the committee members, and it's between the town planning staff to approve it or disapprove it. So we just want the council members to really look at this and see the adverse effect of not allowing residents to apply for minor variance over the next 2 years.
Okay, Jeff, if I could be so bold to interrupt for just a moment there, please.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned right at the outset, and I don't know whether you heard me or not, there's 5 minutes set aside for each deputation. And I know we're talking about two different things here. I'm having to deal with item number 9, consent report 043-20, and I'm not sure if you're alluding to this or if you're alluding to 44, item number 5. And I know that it's fairly hard for a layperson to follow that,
Yes, sir.
but you had 5 minutes on each one of them. So I believe a lot of it, if I was following it correctly there, you were alluding to number 5, dealing with the interim control bylaw. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Mr. Krantz, I do apologize. It's hard to get everything in 1 minute, 5 minutes to you. It was more to do, the first one that I just spoke about was the new bylaw proposed where a minor variance cannot be granted over the 2 years.
So we're talking now, just so as we're clear, item 44-20.
I believe, yes. Yes, that would be for mature neighborhoods.
Yes.
That's the interim bylaws, Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
No, sorry, I was alluding to the other, where they're proposing the new bylaw in the character area.
43-20.
I believe that would be 43-20. I'm sorry, I didn't even touch bases on the interim bylaw. I do apologize.
Now, I'm going to bring in Barb Koopmans, our planner. Barb, maybe you could just clarify to help all of us, including me, as to exactly what is being proposed or thought about here. I know I'm a little confused on both of these presentations. Ms. Koopmans?
Good evening, Your Worship. Through you and for the benefit of the delegate as well as for council, the moratorium is something that was introduced fairly recently in the Planning Act. So as council may recall, in a lot of applications where you'll see part of the recommendation allowing for variances. And these are in situations where the subdivision this is predominantly in new developments, where you'll see the subdivision is still under its final review. It's sufficient for draft approval, but there may be tweaking, and that tweaking of the subdivision design for whether it's transportation or parkland or schools or some other reason may trigger some reconfiguration of lots, therefore triggering variances. So we wanted a little bit of flexibility there. In this particular case, staff has not proposed to include any relief from the Planning Act moratorium for a period of 2 years, because we were looking at a specific problem identified by council through a notice of motion in terms of the construction of larger homes. So what we wanted to do is, and Hugo Recon, our planner with the carriage of this project, has done a lot of work with the community. He's done a lot of community walks and outreach and engagement, and really tried to understand what was important about these neighborhoods for the community. So what he has done, he's crafted in consultation with the rest of staff and external agencies, zoning bylaw standards that reflect what is important to the community. So we didn't include those provisions for that relief because we wanted to test and see how these work for a period of 2 years, specifically to test the new provisions. He's looked at these relative to, believe me, a property by property basis, looking at setbacks, looking at what is characteristic of all these neighborhoods. So he's tried to find zoning standards, and I think he's arrived at that reflect the general neighborhood character. And so that's why we haven't recommended that at this point.
Well, thanks very much, Ms. Koopmans. I think that certainly helps myself and council there. And I'm not sure, Mr. Jensen, there, if that helped you at all, but I really want to try and get it very, very clear. We're dealing with now, as far as I'm concerned, item number 9 under consent. and I reference the report number DS 43-20. And can I assume that you're not in favor of what's being suggested here or recommended?
Hi, Mr. Krantz and Councillor.
Yes.
I'll make it clear, I'm not opposing to the new bylaw. I do respect Hugo and Barb Koopman on the work they've done for the new bylaw. What am I opposing is taking the right away from homeowners that want to improve a home, where they need to do an addition. And that will trigger variances because the house is legal non-conforming, which is the existing house, which happens very often in the town of Milton, a lot of our projects. And we're basically taking that individual right of a homeowner away from allowing to apply for minor variance. Under the Planning Act, there's a process that you can apply for a minor variance. Doesn't mean you're going to get it and be granted it, because it does have to go in front of planning staff and committee of adjustment members. And I think that's where the decision should be made. If somebody's coming in for an application for a new home and they want to exceed the current new bylaw, and we have 2 new proposals where we use the new bylaw as our template, and we're working very strongly with that. And if they go in front of council on a new home, i.e. the monster home, it'll be up to discretion of planning if they support it or the committee of adjustment members to deny the application or bring it forward and pass it. That I understand fully, and I want to make sure council that I'm not disapproving of that. What I'm more concerned about is the resident in the town of Milton that wants to improve their home, put an addition on their home. Right now we have 17 current projects in Milton. And out of the 17 in this particular bylaw of DS 4320 we're talking about, there's 7 of them that are addition rentals. And if the new bylaw comes in effect, out of those 7, 4 of them, the existing home does not comply to the current bylaw. They will need a variance on the existing dwelling. So what I'm saying, it's another long process they have to go through, and I just don't.
And again, Jeff, if I might, there you made that point and made it fairly clear before there. So I hear you, and I suspect that certainly all of my colleagues who's online with us hear that as well. So that's points well made. So, and again, keeping in mind that council will deal with this after you have delegated. Now we're talking about 43-20. Now let's talk about 43, and you do have the floor. Let's talk about item number 5, DS 44, and that is the interim control bylaw for mature neighborhoods. Have you got any input on that?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor Krantz.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Again, in reviewing of this interim bylaw, again, we have some concerns again. We have a lot of active projects. The new interim bylaw in that whole area is an RLD zoning bylaw, but the interim bylaw will put a hold on a lot of development in the current downtown Milton by allowing 25% increase of the current footprint of an existing dwelling. For example, 1,200 square foot bungalow allows a person to put 300 square foot addition on. Height cannot exceed the existing. We do a lot of approach in Milton, so that we feel that's another obstacle. We're not opposing to an interim bylaw. What we oppose to are the 2 restrictions. So one, I think if council could look at maybe setting a height as per the new bylaw, saying it's 9.5 meters maximum height to the grade to top of roof, like the new bylaw proposing. And as far as the increase in gross floor area, we would hope council could reconsider that and look at maybe capping it as a percentage based on lot ratio. So based on the lot size, you cap the allowable addition percentage based on the lot, not capping at 25%. If you have a large lot, based on the current bylaw, you can build a larger footprint based on lot coverage, based on the percentages. So we're looking at a different way to do this. So because if not, additions and rentals will cease. People will not go ahead with them because there's too much headaches, too much processes, another fee. So I think it's going to slow down a lot of development, which is going to hurt local business, where people are not going to go to Lumberville to buy supplies. They're not going to go for coffee. So we're not opposing to it. I think it just needs to be re-looked at in a different way, that it gives council and planning staff enough time to really look at reamping this bylaw if they choose to do this. But putting a cap at 25%, I think, is not the right amount. I think it should be based on the lot size. A lot of these houses that we're doing in this area are being renovated and added to. So, and majority, if it's 1,000 square foot bungalow on a large lot, they're usually building a 2,000 square foot. So they're adding 1,000 square foot addition. A 2-car garage on a bungalow is 400 square feet. You exceed 25% again. So we're just trying to find a way with planning in the town. Even if this motion got deferred for maybe more investigation, I think it would be something that would be better for everybody, especially for council, because it's going to really hurt a lot of people trying to improve their homes on the interim bylaw. So we're not opposing to it. We're just opposed to the numbers.
Okay, you made your, sorry, Jeff, you've made your point and made it quite well there. And again, the clerk is indicating that you've had more than 5 minutes on each one of these. So, and again, I try to stick to the council rules here. So I want to thank you very much for your presentation on both of these items here. Now, council, I know the delegation now, it'll be up to council now. I still have the item number 9 to deal with, and it's been dealt with and pulled out and dealt with separately. Either you approve it as presented or amended, or whatever the majority of council wishes to do on that, because all I have is the consent items numbers 1 to 8 be approved. And again, with the exception of item number 5, as I recall, or number 7 that was taken out and dealt with separately, has been removed. So all in favor of the balance of those consent items being approved, unless I see a hand go up, I will assume the majority is in favor of that portion of it. So that portion of it is carried. Now, members of council, number 9, you see the way that it's recommended in the report. What's your wish there, Madam Clerk? Just on process to make sure we get this right and correct. Madam Clerk? Okay, the clerk, maybe if you could unmute yourself and suggest to council and see if they buy into that, or do they want to deal with it now when it's still fresh in their mind?
Thank you, Worship. Just the way that our agenda is structured, we do have the delegations portion, and we do have a public meeting, 2 public meetings that are scheduled to immediately follow the delegations. So I'm just looking for clarification if it would be the preference to move consent item number 9 down into items for consideration when it can be discussed at the same time as that related item that's already within items for consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Clerk. And I think I'm certainly in favor of that, but I'm seeing the odd nod from my colleagues that that's probably the way to proceed, because we do have other listed delegations, and it would be unfair for them to have to wait until we debate these 2 items here. So members of council, that's the way that we will proceed. Okay, dealing with a portion under public meetings, DS 41-20 Milton Thompson Road Development Group. The clerk makes a statement, then we'll have a brief pause. Melinda McCroy from MHBC, representative for the applicant, for their presentation, and further delegations wishing to connect. Questions or comments from council, we'll hold the vote. Public meeting is now closed, and that's the format. So, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you. So as we move to the public meeting portion of the agenda tonight, this is a public meeting under the Planning Act with respect to Milton Thompson Road Development Group for lands municipally known as 981 and 995 Thompson Road and 0 Kennedy Circle. Council will consider approval for the related bylaws for this application at a later date. If you wish to be notified of the decisions, please make a written request to the town clerk at 150 Mary Street, Milton, L9T 6Z5, or email townclerk@milton.ca. The purpose purpose of the public meeting is to receive input on the proposed applications. Representatives for the applicant are in attendance. Staff will be taking detailed notes, but will only be speaking to points of clarification. We're going to share a screen with a dedicated phone number and an email address. This information is for members of the public wishing to speak to council with respect to this matter at this public meeting only. Anyone wanting to connect will be given step-by-step instructions on how to enter and participate in the meeting. We'll now take a brief pause to allow members of the public to connect and give our staff time to assist.
And members of council, I'll be guided by the clerk when we think there's been pause enough, and make sure that everybody has his or her input. Okay, the clerk advises me now that we've had that 5-minute pause, so we will get under way now. So Melinda McCroy from MHBC, represented for the applicant for their presentation. So Ms. McCroy, please go ahead.
So your worship, I'm actually promoting Melinda, but while she makes her way over, Melinda actually has a presentation that they've pre-recorded. I don't know if she wants to say any words before I start that presentation.
Okay, Ms. McCroy, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Krantz and members of council. My name is Melinda McCrory from MHBC Planning. And as mentioned, I have pre-recorded my presentation for this evening. So we'll ask that the clerk please now play the presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions at the end.
Sorry about that. Just give me 1 second to fix my own sound. 1 second.
Of our client, Milton Thompson Road Development, GP Inc., we will be providing a brief presentation on the proposed development and supporting applications submitted for 981 and 995 Thompson Road South and 0 Kennedy Circle for zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision. I will start by providing a brief overview of the subject lands and surrounding context. The subject lands are situated at the northeast corner of Thompson Road South and Kennedy Circle and consist of 3 parcels of land with a total size of approximately 1.4 hectares with 92 meters of frontage on Thompson Road South and 112 meters of frontage on Kennedy Circle. 995 Thompson Road is occupied by a single detached dwelling and surface parking lot. The property was formerly used as the Thompson Dental and Wellness Center. 981 Thompson Road is occupied by a 1-story single detached dwelling. 0 Kennedy Circle is currently vacant. I will next provide a brief overview of the policy and regulatory framework. The Town of Milton official plan designates the subject lands as residential area in Schedule B Urban Area Land Use Plan and Schedule C6D Bristol Survey Secondary Plan Land Use Plan in the Town of Milton official plan. Residential areas permit a wide range of residential uses, including apartment buildings. The Town of Milton zoning bylaw zones the subject lands as future development, residential low density 1, exception 144, residential medium density 1, and natural heritage system zone. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to rezone the subject lands to residential high density. The RHD zone permits apartment buildings. A site-specific exception is proposed for the RHD zone in order to address site-specific modifications to setbacks and parking requirements. The NHS zone will be retained and defined with the developable portion of the lands zoned as RHD. The proposal. The first submission site plan included a mid-rise 6-story apartment building with a gross floor area of 11,408 square meters and 138 dwelling units with a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units. The majority of the building is oriented to front onto Thompson Road with a portion fronting on Kennedy Circle having an L-shaped form. The proposal has been designed to be human-scaled and pedestrian-oriented through the placement of the principal entrance off of Kennedy Circle, high-quality streetscaping, and extensive outdoor amenity areas that are positioned along the site's southern property line, immediately east and west of the proposed site access off of Kennedy Circle. Indoor amenity areas are also proposed at grade. A 15-meter buffer from the wetland feature and 10-meter buffer from the woodland limit on the site has also been incorporated. These environmental lands will ultimately be conveyed to the town as a separate block delineated through the draft plan of subdivision. With 138 units, the proposal has a density of 150 units per hectare in keeping with the official plan. The areas requesting relief to the zoning bylaw provisions are indicated in red with a minor reduction to front yard, interior side yard, and exterior side yard and parking all requested. These reductions in setbacks were requested to provide a pedestrian-oriented and animated street and to improve the relationship between the building and the public realm. Modifications have been made to the site plan to address comments received from staff from the first submission circulation, including an increased setback to the north from 8.6 meters to 11 meters, revisions to the daylight triangle, building length increase along Kennedy Circle and a reduction along Thompson Road, and parking area revisions to accommodate increased setbacks to the natural heritage block. The revised site statistics are shown here, showing the reduction in units from 138 to 137, the increase to the interior side yard, the increase to the parking proposed, and a minor increase to the gross floor area, as well as a minor revision to the unit mix. The Thompson Road South elevation is shown here, showing the stepping in the built form down to 3 stories and the variety of materials proposed. The Kennedy Circle elevation is shown here, showing the primary building entrance and stepping in the built form down to 3 stories as well. Thank you for listening to our presentation this evening. We are happy to now respond to any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCroy. That members of council, you've seen and heard the presentation. Are there any questions to the delegation? Councillor Cluett, I see your hand up. Councillor Cluett, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thanks very much for your presentation. I understand that this was the presentation that was given to the public a couple of weeks ago, before this meeting was to take place, and so I thank you very much for doing that. Some of the comments that I've received from residents in the area, and especially the ones that are on the side of basically we're on Kennedy Circle before Bennett, is a buffering. How are many of the people were saying that they're going to be staring at this building from their porch or their side of part of their house. Is there a buffering plan? I can see it in there. I know that we're not at the site plan stage just yet, but is there a plan to sort of insulate a little bit these houses that are along Kennedy Circle to sort of avoid looking at the big 6-story building next to them?
Ms. McCroy?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Cluett, for that question. We have designed the site plan and sited the building so as to ensure the massing itself is set back as much as possible from the existing residential to the north and to the east. The existing residential to the east in particular, we've located the amenity areas in that location, which will help to ensure that that buffer is implemented. And as you noted, we're not yet at the site plan stage, but when we get to the site plan stage, we will prepare a landscape plan, which demonstrates how much planting is possible in this area to further provide that buffering to the residential to the east to ensure that they're not staring at a building wall beside them.
Thank you for that. The other question I had is of concerns. I know that were people in and around the area was the protection of the woodlands behind their place and as well as further up around. So is there going to be some kind of protection put in place sort of to border the property lines to protect I believe the NHS lands that are there behind?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, there will be the buffer block that has been delineated as part of our environmental impact study has been determined from the limits of the woodlot, the wetland, and the meander belt. So these appropriate setbacks have been implemented, and the draft plan of subdivision demonstrates that natural heritage system zone as a separate block that will ultimately be conveyed to the town. And to ensure its long-term protection, it will require a chain link fence along its perimeter to ensure that the developable portion of the block is separated from and protecting the natural heritage zone. We also, as part of the first submission, we did receive comments from staff asking us to increase the setbacks from the parking area to that block. So that was a revision we made with our second submission. We incorporated an increased setback below grade at 3 meters, a minimum of 3 meters. And then at grade, the parking area is set back a minimum of 1.5 meters. And that was a question we received from the first submission. So together, all of those items will ensure that that natural heritage system zone block will be protected in the long term.
Councillor Cluett, anything further?
No, that's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the answers and look forward to more opportunities to see this project develop.
Thank you. Any other member of council, any questions of the delegate? Seeing none, Ms. McRoy, thank you very much for your presentation. And again, I'm going to check with Nina or our clerk there if there's anyone else. Again, keeping in mind that this is a public meeting, if there's anyone else waiting in the wings, we will hear from that individual or individuals. Clerk is indicating that she has nothing coming on her screen here for this public meeting, known as Staff Report 041-20, better known as the Thompson Road Kennedy Circle application. And again, thank you very much. There's no one else. Members of council, do you have any questions? Madam Clerk, do we have a prepared resolution on this? Have a resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and second by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that report DS 041-20 be received for information. Members of council, you've got the report, you've heard the resolution. Any further questions? Seeing none, then I will assume everyone's in favor unless I see a hand go up like this. And I see no hands going up, so that is carried. Okay, Madam Clerk, now we're going to be dealing with DS 042-20, better known as the Milcon 3 Developments Limited. And Madam Clerk, you're to make a few statements and then we will have a brief pause. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So this is a public meeting under the Planning Act with respect to the Milcon 3 development application. Council will consider approval of the related bylaws for this application at a later date. If you wish to be notified of decisions, please make a written request to the town clerk at 150 Mary Street in Milton or email townclerk@milton.ca. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive input on the proposed applications. Representatives for the applicant are in attendance. Staff will take detailed notes, but will only be speaking to points of clarification. We're now going to share a screen with a dedicated phone number and email address. This information is for members of the public wishing to speak to council with respect to this matter. For anyone wanting to connect, you'll be given step-by-step instructions on how to enter and participate in the meeting via phone. We'll now take a brief pause to allow members of the public to connect and give our staff time to assist.
Okay, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, the pause is over now. So Nina, if you could bring on Karen Bennett from Glenn Schnar and Associates, and again on behalf of the applicant. Nina, over to you.
I'm just promoting Karen over, your worship. She should be joining shortly. There she is. So Karen, if you just want to unmute and turn on your video whenever you're ready. There she is.
Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, I see you there. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. I do have a slideshow actually, too.
Oh, here you go, Karen. You'll just prompt me when to change the slides.
I will. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Krantz and members of council. My name is Karen Bennett, a planner with Glenn Schnar and Associates, and I'm here tonight representing Fieldgate Developments in connection with the Milcon 3 draft plan of subdivision and related zoning bylaw amendment applications in Boyne Survey. Next slide, please. The lands are located east of 16 Mile Creek on the north side of Britannia Road on approximately 20 hectares of land, or about 50 acres of land. The majority of the property was previously used for agriculture and it's vacant now. The valley and the natural heritage system associated with 16 Mile Creek represent the western portion of this property, and that portion of the property is to be protected and preserved. The limits of development associated with those features were confirmed through minutes of settlement related to resolving appeals to the secondary plan in 2018. Lands to the north, east, and west beyond 16 Mile Creek are currently being considered for future development or are being developed for future development, consisting primarily of residential development in conformity with the secondary plan. Immediately east along Britannia Road frontage are 2 existing residential lots and the Oma Presbyterian Church and the Britannia Pumping Station. Next slide, please. The lands are designated residential, natural heritage system, and Parkway Belt West Plan area in the Milton official plan. As shown on this slide, the lands are designated residential area and natural heritage system in the secondary plan. The draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment proposal conform to and implement the secondary plan. Next slide, please. The draft plan of subdivision proposes low-density dwellings in the form of different sizes of traditional single detached dwellings, an internal road network, a village square, stormwater management pond, and a 5-meter trail. To clarify, there are no semi-link dwellings proposed here. Access to the subdivision is proposed from the south and east via a new Kennedy Circle West extension with traffic signals anticipated at Britannia and Kennedy, and from a number of local streets and Logan Drive, which is a collector road coming from the east. The draft plan proposes a total of 140 single detached dwelling units of varying sizes. Also shown on this plan, we have residential reserve blocks in purple. The village square block is in green, in the light green. The NHS and 16 Mile Creek blocks are in the darker green. The buffer blocks in the 5-meter trail are in the lime green, and the stormwater management pond is in light blue at the bottom. Allocation has been secured for this draft plan from the region of Halton's new 2020 allocation program. Next slide, please. The current zoning for the property is future development and natural heritage system, as shown on the left side of this slide. Proposed zoning on the right-hand side of the slide seeks an RMD 1 special zone for the singles, an NHS zone for the 16 Mile Creek NHS area, an OS zone for the village square, an OS2 zone for the stormwater pond, all consistent with the draft plan layout. The only relief we are seeking through the zoning bylaw amendment in the RMD 1 special zone is to allow for singles with a slightly reduced minimum frontage of 9.15 meters, whereas the parent RMD 1 zone requires a minimum 9.5 meter frontage. This only applies to about 41 singles on our current plan, but because they are dispersed throughout the plan, we're seeking the zone across the entire plan area for the singles. Next slide, please. This slide just shows an outline of the reports, the technical reports that were prepared in connection with our submissions. And next slide, please. In summary, the proposed development is consistent with provincial and regional policies, conforms to the policies of the Milton official plan, and it implements the secondary plan. It will add an additional 140 single detached units, which will contribute to the town's housing supply and conforms to the region's allocation development requirement. And the development respects and enhances the existing surrounding community. It includes a village square and a 5-meter trail to provide recreation and public space to contribute towards a complete community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bennett. Members of council, are there any questions of Ms. Bennett? Councillor Challoner, go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just very quickly, I'm assuming that the street names that are on the plan are for illustrative purposes only.
Of course, we tried to adopt some of the street names that we know are existing to the east, but certainly we know that has to go through its own process.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Any other questions of Ms. Bennett? If not, Ms. Bennett, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now I'll go to the clerk. I know that this is a public meeting and we're attempting to find out if there's anyone else waiting to be heard on this public meeting. The clerk is indicating that she has no one lined up wishing to address this item here. So with that, members of council, we do have a prepared resolution dealing with that. Oh, Councillor Best, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just two concerns I wanted to raise with staff for their technical report. The first one is the Britannia Road access. If I noted from the regional reports, this section between Regional Road 25 and Jamestown Parkway is the last section to be upgraded. And that could be a number of years away. So just asking about in terms of the intersection, that it is timed with the construction so we don't have a problem with people trying to access a 2-lane rural road. And second concern, looking at where that location is for the stormwater pond. If I recollect correctly, the Britannia Road drops 10 meters in this area to go into the 60 Mile Creek Valley. If you're going to have a body of water sitting above the road, is there going to be any concerns with erosion and water coming onto the road in the future? So it's some concerns that you can deal with regional officials about.
Okay, I think Councillor Best has probably more of a comment and direction to staff to consider that when they're going through the process, or did you wish a response on it now?
If they wanted to respond to it, but if not, just as a concern, because I don't want to be a situation where people are trying to come onto this roadway and finding out that 2 years later, they're still under construction.
Good point. Ms. Koopmans, have you any inkling or any indication on that? And again, keeping in mind for the most part, it's a regional road.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Best, through the design of the Britannia Road improvements, town staff has been consulting on an ongoing basis with regional staff. There is a high degree of coordination. We know that timing isn't always perfect. However, we will consider and have addressed both stormwater management, including drainage. Actually, the subdivision is intended to pick up drainage from Britannia Road as opposed to have drainage impacting it. And as well, access issues will certainly be considered.
Councillor Best, anything further?
Thank you. After surviving the Derry Road fiasco, I want to make sure we don't have repeat on Britannia.
Yeah, certainly concur with those sentiments. Okay, members of council, I do have a motion moved by Councillor Hamid and second by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that report DS 042-20 be received for information. Any other member of council, anything on this report and or this resolution? If not, I will assume that the majority is in favor of this resolution unless I see hands go up like this. I'm not seeing any hands going up, so I will assume now that this is carried. Members of council, thank you very much. And that does conclude this public portion of our meeting here this evening. So thanks to the public. Now, members of council, we'll deal with items under consideration. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and seconded by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the service delivery review phase 1 outcomes and status update as outlined in Schedule A be received. Number 2, and that the following recommendations identified in Schedule A be approved. That staff proceed with the conversion of seasonal workers in phase subject to annual budget approvals of the reallocation of existing resources and associated funding sources. And B, that the Community Services Department continue providing oversight and management of the energy management portfolio within the existing staff complement. And again, Ms. Scott, I know that you are going to give us a brief overview on this. So Christina, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Council will recall last August that 18 high priority opportunities for the phase 1 service delivery project, which included the former Community Services Department and Operations Division. Now we're all the Community Services Department, which is wonderful. Subject to further financial analysis and operational analysis, the consultant recommended 3 timeframes for review and implementation, and the appendix within the report outlines the recommendations and status updates for the short, medium, and long-term opportunities, which were defined from the consultant between 18 and 36 months. So far, a total of $225,000 has been identified and is reflected either in the 2020 budget or will be in the 2021 budgets. Obviously, work will continue on the remainder of the opportunities, and council will be consulted via reports on anything that's listed as pending. And I'm happy to address any questions. The directors are also here, albeit virtually, in case any details are required in any of the specific areas.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Much appreciated. Members of council, are there any questions of Ms. Scott or this report or this resolution? I'm seeing none, Christina, so well done. I think it's reasonably well illustrated as to what's evolving here. So members of council, you've heard the motion. Further questions of the motion and or the report? If not, I will assume that the majority is in favor unless I see a hand go up like this in opposition. I'm not seeing any hands going up, so this motion is carried. Okay, the next item, moved by Councillor Hamid, second by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the updates to the town's reporting framework as identified in Appendix B to report CORS-55-20 be implemented. And again, with that, members of council, or Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you. So just as an introduction into the report, on May 25th, 2020, Council passed a resolution directing staff to complete an inventory of regular reports to Council, including the frequency, and to report back to Council no later than October with any amendments recommended to provide Council on information. So staff have completed that inventory of the regular reports and recommending various improvements in areas such as the Council staff work plan, program and service achievements, service delivery review status, building activity, and legal updates. So reporting to Council through regular staff reports will continue to form one component of the town's overall communication strategy with Council, the public, and with stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, on That members of council, are there any comments, any questions with regards to this report? I'm not seeing any hands go up there, but if I could just comment on it for just a brief moment. I was one that supported this as well when it was brought forward back in May. But I've had conversation with the CEO, and I've had conversation, of course, with the clerk on this. If we have been, I guess, missing anything in the past, and I'm, informed that there has been very rarely anything that council should be aware of ever missed. So it's always nice bringing it forward. So, and again, I know it wasn't the intent to create more work for staff or further, I guess, as I'd refer to it, useless information on there. But Mr. CEO, I'm going to go to you to see what you see maybe changing in this, if anything much, because I don't see a lot changing, but correct me if I'm wrong on some of the reporting, and keeping council informed as we should be.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through you, we're happy with the notice of motion. It gave us a chance to put our thoughts together as to what the appropriate reports are. Many of these already existed in various formats throughout work that were done, but it did give us a good chance to look at what reports can be put together. So we're pleased with the report. We're pleased with what we think will be council's support of it, and we will move on.
Also, you've heard the motion here, and it's moved by Councillor Hamid and seconded by Councillor Clinton. Be it resolved that the updates to the town's reporting framework is identified in Appendix B to report COS 55-20 be implemented. Any questions to this report and or this, Councillor Malbuff?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, because it was mentioned in the report concerning the reporting of transit numbers, and that basically staff's recommending that we stay with the status quo. Now, that's where I have a problem. You may recall, Mr. Mayor, that a few years back, council approved the spending of, I believe it was around $350,000 to purchase a new state-of-the-art system that would provide us with more accurate and detailed ridership information in a more timely basis. So now here we are 3 years later and $350,000 short. And we are getting less information than we did before. We used to get route information. We used to get riders per route. Now we're not getting any of that information. And it's still taking 2 to 3 months to get those numbers. That I still can't understand. I've spoken to other municipalities with transit, and they can get detailed ridership numbers day by day and route by route. And I can't understand why we can't do it. So, and then again, here in the report, it says that the transit reporting will remain as is. And for me, that's not acceptable.
Okay, very well taken, a very valid comment as well. So I'm not sure what staff person that might address that, but Ms. Scott, I think you might be the most appropriate.
Through your worship, we have provided the information that has been typically provided to council over the years. In this particular year, obviously, our reports are delayed, but they're delayed because we only have 2 staff in transit that are trying to put information together. And we have used that staff time to try to advance other council priority projects like the alternative service delivery, the mobile fare payment collection system, and things like that. If there is additional transit information that will help council make informed decisions, I'm open to hearing it. Obviously, I just inherited transit in March, but the last few times that information has been provided to council, we haven't received any further requests or any further requests for data information to make these informed decisions, but happy to take council's direction.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest, and again, following up with what Councillor Malbuff has just suggested there, that maybe happened, Christine, keeping in mind that you're reasonably new to that portfolio there. But anyway, that will come forward. But Councillor Malbuff, you had the floor.
No, that's fine. I appreciate the commissioner's response, and I'll be talking to her directly about it. talking to her personally on what my concerns are, and I'm not going to get into a debate on it tonight.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, but I'm suggesting that all council be informed on it with a report. So that will happen. Councillor Melboof, any further?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good. Any other member of council, anything on this item? I'm not seeing anyone, so you've heard me read the motion there. And again, I will assume the majority is in favor of, unless I see a hand or two go up like this. I'm not seeing any hands go up, so that is carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and seconded by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the province of Ontario be requested to ensure that financial support will be available to municipalities in 2021 as the financial impacts of COVID-19 are expected to continue. And that any further distribution of funding be undertaken on an equitable basis, such as phase 1 distributions in August 2020. And with that, Glenn, if you would highlight this report, please, Mr. Collin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did touch on it a little earlier, and it's similar to some of the themes that we spoke about when we talked about the 2020 pressures. We have looked at the program, and we do talk about some alternatives within the report for council's benefit. That was part of just the diligence process to ensure we've considered everything possible. But at the end of the day, looking at what the province is looking for through this program, what their targets and their goals and what they're trying to achieve are, and the eligibility, it doesn't seem like the phase 2 funding is a route really available for municipalities in Milton's specific position. And our larger concern at this point, given where we think we're going to end up this year based on some of the new information we're finding, our larger focus really is on how to best position the town for 2021 and continued pressures that may occur through that. So hence the recommendation in front of us, and that ideally, whether it's out of the existing funding envelope or additional, there may be some supports available, and that Milton will fall in the category of municipalities that may be eligible for that in 2021, should we need it, should the existing mitigation alternatives that we're looking at not be enough. So with that, I can take any other questions that there may be.
Okay, members of council, any questions on this report or any questions of Glenn, Councillor Challoner?
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't have a question, Your Worship. I just want to thank Glenn for the report, and he knows what my concerns are, and I remain concerned about next year, but I agree with his strategy.
Thank you. Any other questions and or comments? Councillor Cluett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that this is, I guess it might be a crystal ball question for Glenn, but given the fact that we have a number of municipalities now in the short term that are being sent into what's called the modified stage 2 from the province, and the province assuring those municipalities that they'll be supported, and given the Premier's comments on Friday that Halton region is on watch, and more specifically for us, are there any? Has there been any information from the province or anything that you might know offhand that might be available to municipalities should, and hopefully not, for Halton region and Milton be moved into that modified stage 2?
From a financial basis at this stage, they've been reluctant, probably rightfully so, in terms of where the phase 2 funding could end up. Their first step is to get a sense of where municipalities think they're going to land at the end of the year. And based on what they've seen and what they anticipate, they do expect most municipalities to have sufficient funds from what was already provided. We have heard and seen some municipalities indicating that they are going to proceed with phase 2 applications based on their specific circumstance and pressures. And most of that was heard before discussion of potentially going back to a modified stage 2. In part, it'll depend on what some of those modifications are. For example, the areas that are most affected for municipalities, especially the lower tier, are revenues in things like the programs and facility rentals and in transit. So some programs and activities can still continue to a degree and on a modified basis, obviously, with that. So I think each municipality will be just looking at the degree that it may be affected should they end up in that for any period of time. But as of right now, each municipality is working with that October 30th deadline, and we won't really get a sense from a funding perspective what that'll mean from the province probably till a little bit closer to year end.
Councillor Cluett?
No, fair enough. That's I appreciate the answer. I know, like I said, it's more of a crystal ball going forward, but I know that it's obviously a fluid situation going forward, and I really appreciate the report and also agree with the direction that you're taking on this. And thank you very much for all the hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Cluett. Members of council, is there anything further on item number 3 under items for consideration? You've got the report, you've heard the resolution. Any further questions? And again, I will assume that the majority is in favor of it unless I see a hand go up like this, it's in opposition. And I'm not seeing any hands go up now, so that is carried. Dealing with item number 4, resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and seconded by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the Development Service Report DS 039-20 outlining applications for a plan of subdivision amendments to the Town of Milton official plan and amendments to zoning bylaw 016-2014 as amended to facilitate the construction of a secondary school be approved. And the staff be authorized to bring forward official plan amendment number 61 in accordance with the draft official plan amendment attached as Appendix 1 to a report DS 039-20 for council adoption. And the staff be authorized to bring forward an amending zoning bylaw in accordance with the draft bylaw attached as Appendix 2 to report DS 039-20 for council adoption. And whereas the Planning Act limits the ability to apply for a minor variance for a 2-year period following approval of this bylaw, be it resolved that a privately initiated application for minor variance may be made. And further, town clerk forward a copy of report DS 039-20 and that the decision to the region of Halton for their information. And members of council, that's the resolution, the report that you will be dealing with in just a few moments. So is there any staff input? And I think this is fairly self-explanatory as far as I'm concerned, but I'm not sure if any staff have any into it. Ms. Koopmans?
Through you, Your Worship, this is a good news story. The funding has come through for the secondary school. Council earlier this year dealt with a temporary use bylaw to allow holding portables on the St. Francis Xavier, formerly Vanier High School site. So expediting the construction of this high school now with government funding available is a good news story for the community and will keep students in appropriate accommodation within our community.
And I thank you very much for that, members of council. And again, you heard Ms. Koopmans say it's definitely a good news story, and I certainly concur with that. So is there any questions or comments on this report, Councillor Cluett?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, again, I concur with you and Commissioner Koopmans. This is a great news story. Anything that gets us closer here in the town of Milton to providing quality or full-size facilities for our students and less reliance on our ever-expanding number of portables for here in the Catholic School Board specifically, but is a great news story, and looking forward to getting this done as quickly as possible, and to, like I said, just to declog some of our schools. So instead of a good news story, I'll call it a great news story.
I thank you very much for that. Any further discussion, questions, or comments? Councillor Di Lorenzo, go ahead.
I agree. It is great news. I was reading through the report. I was trying to find if there's any details more about the specific timing, because I know, like in the 2021 school year, we have that portable situation with existing high school and the busing and all that. So I assume, even though the funding has been released, it's still a little bit too late to negate any of the negative impact that's going to be occurring in the near term with regards to that temporary parking space?
Not sure, Ms. Koopmans, if you've got any timelines that you've been given yet. Barb, go ahead.
Through your worship, the school board is committed to advancing the site as soon as possible. Through the subdivision process and the site plan process, there are some technical matters that we are working towards resolving. However, staff is working very closely with school board staff and their consultants to move this forward. We will have a period of time where there will have to be portables for temporary accommodation, but it is a stopgap. And now that the funding has been confirmed by the province, we are advancing this project as quickly as possible with a view to having the school open.
Councillor Di Lorenzo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that answer. So I guess, just following that, we have to follow, the policies and procedures. I'm not asking for us to break any other policies, but I just want to make sure that the town of Milton is proactively as possible to move this forward as diligently as we can, just so that, again, this can be built as soon as possible, so the negative impact of those portables and the busing situation can be resolved as quickly as we can do it. Thank you, Ms. Koopmans.
Thank you, and I'm sure that will happen. And again, it's important that we get on with it. Members of council, are there any further questions or comments on this item? And again, I will assume the majority of us are in favor of it. Again, unless I see a hand or two go up that's in opposition. I'm not seeing any hands go up, so that motion is carried. Now, this, members of council, keeping things straight here, we're going to go back to consent items now, and this will be dealing with consent item number 9 that we had a delegation on earlier on. And I have a motion here moved by Councillor Hamid and second by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the Development Services Report DS 04320 outlining the town initiated local official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to update town policy regarding mature neighborhood areas and character areas and regulations for the downtown character area be approved. And the council enacts a proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 to report DS 43-20. Again, members of council, this was under consent item number 9 earlier on. So Councillor Best, Councillor Tesser-Dirksen there. So Councillor Best, go ahead.
Yes, this is more to the interim control bylaw to staff. Mr. Jensen raised some interesting points regarding the modifications to the bylaw. Could you highlight the rationale for your limiting to 25% and also for the changes in the plan?
Ms. Koopmans.
Through you, your worship, in terms of the interim control bylaw, what staff is looking at is providing some provision within the bylaw for minor modifications, alterations, additions to buildings to occur during the period of the interim control bylaw. Unlike a lot of other interim control bylaws, the study is well underway. Don't forget, the interim control bylaw is to provide space for staff to study a legitimate planning problem. So through council notice of motion some time back, we have identified the challenge that we are experiencing with infill homes and its impact on the character of stable neighborhoods. We are in the process of studying that. Staff anticipates that bylaw amendments will be brought forward probably early in the new year, 2021, so that there will be a limited period of time whereby these the interim control bylaw will be in place and prior to new bylaw being brought forward with standards that are more reflective of the community interest and the character of the established neighborhoods. So we have provided in the interim control bylaw some room for individual applications to move forward. However, it generally would, they're structured so that they would not compromise the overall intent and purpose of the study and what we're trying to achieve in terms of securing stable neighborhoods.
Councillor Best.
Thank you. Just on that point regarding the rationale of keeping to existing heights rather than the new 9.5 meter height limit that has already been recommended for the phase 1 area. Could you highlight the rationale for that?
Through you, Councillor Best, or through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Best, there will be site-specific considerations. We're not looking at uniform bylaw provisions across the board. We have to look at the character of each individual neighborhood and what heights are characteristic in those areas and recommend an ultimate height. So by maintaining the existing heights, we're not creating any new situation that would be contrary to the new provisions that we may be bringing forward.
Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Commissioner Koopmans, for your answers so far. I think if I'm going to put it in more simpler terms, I mean, I suspect that the concern is that people may try to rush into getting their projects initiated or completed, knowing that there's going to be potential restrictions pursuant to the guidelines coming on in the future. So I think that's the whole purpose of the interim control bylaw, is to kind of chill that out a little bit, because we don't want to have people rushing to beat the study being complete, essentially. That being said, I mean, given that there's a proposed exemption process, it looks like there are accommodations made to recognize the rights of property owners, and that's the concern we're getting from some people. I had a phone call today from someone in the local real estate industry who's concerned about how this may potentially affect property values and that sort of thing. So I'm glad to see that staff have taken that into account and are making reasonable accommodations for individual projects and applications coming forward. So overall, I mean, I think it's well done, and I'm in support of it. I did have a question, and Mr. Mayor, you'll have to tell me if this is the right spot to ask it, going back to the consent item, number 9. Could I ask that now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's just with respect to the way that staff are going to be handling the right-of-way and daylight triangling. Is it any different from how it's currently being dealt with in other parts of town? I know I've come across this in my professional work where we've had daylight triangles registered on title and that sort of thing. And I do see that they're going to be registered pursuant to a site plan agreement. Is it pretty well following the same protocol that we already have established, or is it going to be slightly different now with the amendment?
Ms. Koopmans?
Through you, Your Worship, and I believe that Jill Hogan and Hugo Ricon are both on the line, and I may want to promote them. But generally speaking, what we're looking at is within the character area, we have site plan control on single detached dwellings. That is not common across the municipality. Site plan control is not normally applied. Through site plan control, it has been the town's practice in accordance with official plan policies to take road widenings as a condition of site plan approval. What we're trying to do now is protect for ultimate widenings, but not penalize. What we're trying to do through site plan in the character area is protect heritage character and maintain the landscape and cultural heritage within the overall context. What we did not want to do is hinder people from improving their homes because they were faced with a widening. Nina, I don't know if you want to promote Jill or Hugo just to further answer that question.
Yes, Ms. Koopmans, I've actually promoted both of them, so they just have to unmute and start their videos whenever they're ready.
Jill or Hugo, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Barb. I think Barb did answer the question quite well. I think the main difference, though, in terms of what we're proposing with respect to road widenings is that in the character area, we want to protect for a widening should it be required one day or a daylighting triangle. we would not be taking that land free and clear. It would be protected. The town would have the ability to purchase the land should it be required. And we would ensure that no buildings or structures would be permitted to be built within that widening area or daylighting triangle area. That's essentially the difference. It would not be a taking. It would just be basically a reservation to allow the town, if required, to purchase the land one day.
Thank you. Hugo, have you any further to add? Nina, I'm not sure if Hugo can hear us.
Oh,
I
no,
think he's, there we
no,
go.
Mr. Mayor. Yes. No, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, back over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yep, that answers my question really well. I mean, I think from the trick from the beginning with this has been finding that appropriate balance between preserving that character in our mature neighborhoods against the rights of property owners. We have some conflicting rights here and we have to accommodate reasonably both of them. And I think staff have found that balance. So I'm really pleased with the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rick DiLorenzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question after hearing Ms. Koopman's answer to Christina Tesser-Dirksen. The question is, would this kind of would this have addressed some of the concerns related to the issue that Town Council had regards to a property owner on I think it's called Court Street North that had where again they were trying to make some change to the property, and the Town of Milton through the site plan approval was looking to take some land for a road allowance that hypothetically they may or may not, we may or may not need in the future. I know at the time it seemed to be very much hindering that property and other properties within the downtown area from doing any type of change based on the very high bar of right away the town possibly taking that land, even if it wasn't or was not needed. So I know that you're mentioning about a balance, and sometimes a town does need that for those triangles and does need more road allowance. I just wanted to ask if this had been done before then, would this have addressed some of those problems that we were going through back then?
Yeah, Ms. Koopmans.
For you, Worship. Yes, we believe that this proposal does address that situation, whereby we are protecting for the town's ability to ultimately take that land such that it's not encumbered by any buildings or structures. So it is free and clear, and where the zoning protects that setback. In addition to these changes to the official plan and the way we take land through site plan, what we've also done is we've incorporated a provision into the zoning bylaw that no longer penalizes people where we do take land for a public purpose, that it basically then deems their, say, front yard setback or lot frontage, wherever we're taking the land, to still comply with the bylaw. So they measure the setbacks or comply with the zoning based on what they had, not what they will have after the taking. So we've addressed it in two different ways in order to assist people in moving forward with their individual development requirements and improving their properties while still protecting for the town's ultimate needs.
Councillor DiLorenzo.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
Is there anything further on this item? Again, you've heard me read the resolution, and I will assume that there's no more speakers unless I see a hand go up like this in opposition. I will assume the majority of us are in favor of this motion. I am not seeing any hands go up, so the motion is carried. Now, this will deal with Items for consideration, item number 5, known as Report 044-20. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and seconded by Councillor Best, and be it resolved that Council enact the proposed interim control bylaw attached as Appendix 1 to DS 44-20, implementing interim control of large home rebuilds in mature neighborhoods to allow time for the completion of phase 2 and 3 of the mature neighborhoods character study, and that the enactment of any resulting policy and bylaw changes. And the staff complete phase 2, known as the Mountain View Survey in Martin Meadows, and number 3, Falling Brook, Forest Grove, Brownie Meadows, Valley View, Dorset Park, and Timberlea in the mature neighborhoods character study. And further, council approves a process for exemption from the interim control bylaw as outlined in DS 44-20. And again, I think that's reasonably self-explanatory, at least it is to me, but again, not sure, Barb, if there's anything further that needs to be added to this report or this resolution.
Your worship, I'd be pleased to answer any questions that council may have.
I thank you. Members of council, any questions to Ms. Koopmans and or to this report or to this motion? I'm not seeing any hands go up. So as I said, I think it's pretty well self-explanatory. Unless again, I see a hand go up like this, I will assume that the majority of us are in favor of it. And I'm not seeing any hands go up, so that is carried. Number 6, under items for consideration, moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Best, and be it resolved, whereas the rental of short-term accommodations is increasingly dramatically across Ontario, Canada, and North America due to part to the online technologies such as Airbnb and other popular websites. And whereas in order to ensure that any short-term rentals are compatible with surrounding land use and are appropriately regulated, it is imperative that the town of Milton have in place enforceable bylaws and standards. Therefore, be it resolved, the town of Milton staff be directed to undertake a study investigating options for the regulation of Airbnbs and other short-term rentals, including but not limited to updated zoning standards, licensing and requirements, and an associated fee structure, and report back to council with recommendations and any resulting bylaw amendments which addresses the accommodation requirements, health and safety of the community as soon as possible. And again, Councillor Chandler being the mover and Councillor Best being the seconder. Have either one of you gentlemen anything to add to this resolution? Councillor Chandler.
Your worship, very briefly, I introduced this at the last meeting of council, and all members of council have issues in their own wards with respect to this matter. It really reached a difficult point this past summer, and it's been made more difficult with COVID-19, some of the activities that are taking place. And I think that there's an opportunity to do better, and that's why the resolution was brought forward.
I, as one, certainly support it for sure. Councillor Best.
Similar comments to Councillor Challoner. This has been a problem, not so much the short-term rentals, but the advertising and use of party homes, both in the urban and rural area, which is causing a real issue, not only in noise, parking, destruction of property, of neighbors, and not only adjacent neighbors, but to people as far as 100, 200 meters away. And it's a real concern where police are being called in these issues, and something that our bylaw people need more tools, and I'm glad to see this study being recommended.
Thank you, Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with my colleagues who have brought this forward. I'm pretty sure Councillor Best is aware of this certain party house on Derry Road. that we are always CC'd complaints on. And so I think it's high time we do this. I know there are issues related to affordability too, though, linked, and I encourage staff to look at it from that angle as well when they're bringing back the report.
Thank you. Councillor Clute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I fully and wholeheartedly agree with getting this study done. When I know this was initially brought forward at the last council meeting and the local media had picked it up, I got a couple of comments from people saying, why are you trying to control what's going on at the Airbnbs? And I think Councillor Challoner and Councillor Best hit the nail on the head on this one, where, you know, it's not just affecting the particular property. There was an issue with a house here in Ward 3, not too far away from Craig Kielburger High School, where busloads of people, and this is pre and post COVID, came to the house. And when you got up the next morning, just the devastation of the front lawns, the backyards, the neighborhood properties, and from empty beer cans to vomit to everything. And so we really need to make sure that we step up what we can do here locally in town. And I also believe that Airbnb is trying to do a little self-policing as well, which is be more than welcome. So I look forward to seeing this report, and thank Councillor Challoner and Best for bringing it forward.
Certainly concur with that. And again, any further speakers on this motion? Being none, and again, unless I see a hand go up like that in opposition, it will carry. I'm not seeing any hands go up, so that is carried. Item number 7, a resolution moved by Councillor Best and seconded by Councillor Tesser-Dirksen. Be it resolved that whereas there is a growing concern from residents about the nuisance and disruption caused by loud vehicles due to modified mufflers. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to prepare a staff report with respect to excessive noise from vehicles, including considerations for the enforcement of a potential amendment to the town's noise bylaw. Councillor Best.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is similar to the previous request by Councillor Challoner. We've had, basically in the last 9 months, a real growing problem with loud vehicles throughout the community, not only trucks, cars, and motorcycles. The town of Oakville has a similar bylaw regarding motorcycles. We're merely asking for staff to look into what areas we can enforce. I know the police have a project, a noisemaker, but they can only do so much. What I'm concerned of is when you see people modifying cars in their driveways, in shops advertising this, and especially adjacent to residential areas where you have constant noise. And some of these noises can be heard up to 2 kilometers away, and it's something that all you have to do is stand outside and you can hear them racing. I can hear vehicles on Derry Road from my house, which is ridiculous. They shouldn't be this noisy. And there also is controls put in there similar to what we have in the rest of our noise bylaw. Is I'm not looking at town staff going out on the road, basically at the shops and the homes where these we're getting complaints from residents, not only in the rural area but also the urban area.
I thank you. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, a seconder. Anything to add?
No, I think Councillor Best hit all the important points. It does seem to be a problem I find that affects the rural areas disproportionately larger than the urban areas. I mean, we do hear it in the urban areas, but these people tend to go out. Not Tremaine Road is a perfect example now that it's been widened as a bit of a speedway. And then when you have these late at night, I don't know what they're doing, if they're racing or what, but they're out there quite late at night and you can hear it, and it's disturbing the peace and quiet and sleep of residents in the area. So that's why Councillor Best had the foresight to bring it forward, and hopefully we can find a resolution.
I thank you. Councillor Hamid.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take a different view on this. I spoke with a couple of Oakville councillors a little while ago when Halton Police did a noise blitz. As it turns out that in Ontario, pretty much anywhere in Canada, but specifically in Ontario, Highway Traffic Act already gives police officers the authority to ticket any noisemakers, whether it be car, motorcycles, motor assisted bicycle. They do not need to measure the noise. They do not need to calculate anything. They simply need to hear it. And as long as they determine that it's loud, they can issue the ticket and ticket stays. So there is, I don't see the point of town staff or a town related bylaw, considering OPP and Halton Police can already, and they do issue tickets. They have issued tickets in Halton, and they can issue tickets in Halton. So I'm not sure why our staff would get involved beyond what a noise bylaw already covers and what Halton Police can already do. Oakville's bylaw I've looked at, they do a blitz about once a year or twice a year where they pull out every vehicle that they deem might be noisy. And then they take a tape measure, go 50 centimeters away from exhaust at a 45-degree angle and measure the noise and decide whether to get it or not, which I find completely useless considering a police officer, like Council Justice mentioned, can just stand on Tremaine Road. And I stay very close to Tremaine, so I do hear those noises as well myself. So I'm not saying that's not a problem. It is a problem. But the solution is just talk to Halton Police, have them stand at Tremaine Road, pull out vehicles that are loud and ticket them, which they can today. Our staff actually will not be able to do that. I mean, right now it takes, if you contact their staff for a parking ticket, it might take them days to come out and see the car. So I don't see how they'll come and catch a loud vehicle just driving by. So I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm not sure if they've talked to Halton Police or not. I'd like to hear if they have, because if they speak with Halton Police, they'll be more than happy to do a blitz, as they have in Halton region several times in last 12 to 18 months that I know of. And the Twitter, actually, if you search the Twitter, Halton Police has posted pictures as well as videos of them doing blitz, pulling out loud motorcycles as well as loud cars and ticketing them.
I thank you very much for that input. I think we all hear you loud and clear on enforcement or the lack thereof. Any further on this item? If not, and again, unless I see a hand or two go up like this, I will assume the majority of us are in favor of this resolution.
Your Worship?
Yes, Troy McHarg, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought I heard a question in there from Councillor Hamid, and yes, we have been in contact with Halton Regional Police. They already have an active project on right now enforcing against these, and from what I understand, you are correct in that they can enforce, whether it's in driveways or wherever, under the Highway Traffic Act. And our current noise bylaw does cover excessive noise as well, so there wouldn't be any need, to the best of our knowledge, for regulation change. And you are quite right in that the response time from bylaw enforcement, chances are it wouldn't catch an active complaint in progress, and we would not be traveling the streets. That is definitely the jurisdiction of Halton Regional Police.
Okay, Councillor Hamid there now. I'm just wondering again, Councillor Hamid, you have the floor, and I see Councillor Best, and I'll get to him in just a moment. But I just wonder on what I've just heard in the last few minutes, if this may be redundant. I'm not suggesting that's the case, but you got me wondering now.
No, actually,
Hamid, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, that was my exact point. My point was that not only is this redundant, but I do not think this responsibility belongs to bylaw. I don't want our bylaw officers going on street and trying to pull over cars. That's something that's a responsibility of Halton Police, not town bylaw officers. And Town of Milton should not be trying to enforce this. Town of Milton should coordinate with Halton Police so they can then go out in rural areas, the Council Chesterton mentioned, or Tremaine Road, or wherever it might be. And Halton Police already has the authority to do every single thing mentioned. And not only do they have the authority, it's something to do frequently anyway. So if there are concerns, just like we have speeding concerns, we don't pass bylaws against speeding and have bylaw officers try to enforce them. We coordinate with Halton Police. Similarly, we have legitimate noise concern, but the solution is to coordinate with Halton Police and not dump it onto bylaw officers. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll actually be voting against this notice of motion for that reason, not because I don't understand the issue. I agree with the issue. I think we need to solve the issue, but the solution is to work with Halton Police and direct them to the areas where we hear more concerns from, or through a noise bylaw if it's happening in neighborhoods after hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Best, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, as I mentioned to the staff beforehand, this is not to pursue active vehicles. This is for the people that are doing the modifications in the neighborhoods and in the shops, which are openly advertising, they can modify your muffler to make it louder. I understand Councillor Hamid's concerns. All I'm asking for is staff to review current practices, look for the best practices so that we can coordinate with police, but also, beef up our noise bylaws, because obviously it's not working. This is a growing problem, and people are actually going out of their way to modify mufflers and make it lousier. All I have to do is go into any mature neighborhood, and I'm getting complaints from almost every street.
Thank you. Councillor Cluett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I guess this is sort of a follow-up question to our Commissioner McHargue. So basically, with this notice of motion, you had mentioned that we already have a current noise bylaw in place. Now, would that cover what Councillor Best was looking for by going to all the, by being able to go to the shops and nipping the problem in the bud beforehand? Because if the current practices are fine, then maybe we can, maybe this report comes back saying we're covered. Because I agree with Councillor Hamid, the Halton Police do an outstanding job when they do their blitzes. And if it takes a couple of days or even a day to find an officer to go to a parking situation, it's going to be very hard to get them to come out to situations where they're going to be cars are making loud noises. And it happens intermittently throughout the town. I don't want to brush aside the concern of people. It is a concern. It happens from time to time, but if the current practices that we have right now in our bylaws are covering what Councillor Best is looking for in this motion, will the report just come back saying, hey, we're covered?
I don't have the details about how many complaints we receive in bylaw about these issues. So if Megan wishes to jump in, if she has that type of detail, that's fine too. But to the best of my knowledge, all it would take is someone filing a complaint with bylaw. But depending on the backlog of calls, if it is a few days before we actually get to the call and the vehicle in someone's garage is not running, we don't witness the violation, charges can't be laid. However, if there are shops that are advertising this type of thing, if we receive a complaint, we would go there and investigate. And if we witness the violation, we would lay charges.
I think if I could, I don't know, Councillor Cluett, I'm not exactly sure if Troy really addressed your concern or your question on his response there. And I think the question was, I interpreted, are we covered now? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that was the gist of the question, was to find out if we, with our current noise bylaws, are we covered? Can we go to one of these facilities now if someone calls and registers a complaint, to have an bylaw officer go to a particular garage and witnesses this kind of a modification happening or the noise happening? Like I said, I don't want to have a redundant bylaw just to say, look at what we're doing. We want to make sure that the bylaws are consistent and we're not making extra work.
Yes, the bylaw does give us the opportunity to lay the appropriate charges.
Okay, so that's pretty clear as far as I'm concerned, if that's the case. So Councillor Cluett, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, it's I don't want to make busy work for staff if we already have this covered. Maybe for the spirit of the motion, if it goes through, then staff can just confirm that everything is covered and a quick report back to council saying, yep, everything is good, and we don't have to have an additional bylaw. But I know that the Halton Police do an outstanding job in these things, and if we can have a request of Halton Police to come up to Milton to go to these highly identified areas like Tremaine Road, Derry Road, Louis St. Laurent is now becoming one of those spots in Ward 3 and in Ward 4. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, I do not have any further speakers, but Councillor Chandler, go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. My question of Troy is around time. So with the noise bylaw that I'm aware of, we have set times where a certain amount of noise is tolerated and then it's not. Does that also apply to road noise?
Your worship, I'm going to ask Megan Reed to respond to that one. I don't, a number of years ago, the noise bylaw was updated, and it includes, we have metering that we can use to ensure noise thresholds are met, but to the specifics of the bylaw, I don't know that off the top of my head. So, Megan?
Thank you. So with respect to the noise bylaw, we could, with respect to the noise on the roads, there is limited authority for bylaw enforcement officers to pull over any vehicles, which is why working with the Halton Region Police Services would be really important, and I think has been with Project Noisemaker has been effective in their ability to enforce under the Highway Traffic Act. So we would, in some instances, potentially be able to enforce our noise bylaw with these types of activities potentially on private property, but with respect to this activity on the road, we would look to our HRPS partners.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm of the same view as Councillor Hamid on this. I mean, I could live with staff just coming back and saying it's fine, but frankly, what he might want to give consideration to doing is amending his motion to ask Halton Regional Police Services to do a formal blitz, because I'm not aware that they have been doing one in Milton for quite some time, and it might be a very good idea, because I get complaints about what's going on Thompson Road and on Ontario Street, as an example. And I don't recall recently seeing the police stopping automobiles that are making a lot of noise. As a matter of fact, never. So maybe he wants to amend the motion and ask them to do a blitz.
Okay, I'll determine that very quickly. Councillor Best, I don't have any further speakers. You heard Councillor Challoner's suggestion you might want to think about that. And I know you've had about 20 seconds to think about it.
Your worship, if I could
Yes,
just jump in.
Yeah,
Project Noisemaker is already underway, and I believe it started in June. The stats that the police might have, we don't have that information, but they could very easily be invited to come and present the information and the results from Project Noisemaker to council in the future.
Okay. Councillor Best, back to you.
Yes, on this, I appreciate the work the police are doing, but from what I can see, it's a growing problem. What I'd ask staff to do is in this report to include any statistics they can receive from the Halton Regional Police and how effective they are. And basically, I'm asking for a report. I'm not asking for a new bylaw or more regulations or more officers. I just want to see if we are doing the best we can, fine. If we're not, could staff recommend, along with the police, what modifications are needed that could be effective?
Hey, Councillor Challoner, back over to you. You heard the response.
Yeah, and I can support that. But I'm not so sure if that noisemaker is taking place in the town of Milton, Your Worship, based on what I see going on weekends. That we need confirmation that in fact they are doing that blitz in this community, because I'm not seeing it. I'm not hearing it, that's for sure.
I thank you very much. Just one, comment. I didn't think this would be the barn burner of the evening, but anyway, we're all over with it. I don't have any further speakers, and again, I'm not sure which way the vote's going to go. But if it doesn't do anything else, and this passes, and it'll pass with my support anyway. If for no other reason, it'll bring awareness to it, regardless whether there's duplication or not. And of course, that'll be important too. And I recognize the noise as well. So, and again, you've heard the motion appropriately moved by Councillor Best and seconded by Councillor Tesser-Dirksen. The same rules will apply. And the clerk, along with me, will be watching for those hands that'll go up in opposition to it. And we'll be doing the count, and we'll be watching it very closely here. So Those that's in opposition to this resolution, let's see your hands. 1, 2. Okay, that's carried by the majority of us. Thank you very much. Okay, members of council, we're down to that ever popular area in our agenda, regional council update. And again, there's been no regional council meetings for a while now, but I know that there's been some online committee meetings. And of course, here we are on October the 19th. The next regional council meeting will be the 21st, which is 2 days from now. And it's a pretty busy and a very full agenda then I might make mention of. But to my regional colleagues, is there anyone that's got any regional council update? Councillor Cluett, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I know that a lot of us have been getting phone calls about from our family members, the parents of young children, and we're approaching the season of Halloween. And I wanted to point out that our medical officer of health, Dr. Magani, has come up with sort of some guidelines for a safe, COVID-safe Halloween. I know in other jurisdictions they announced today that there's not going to be a door-to-door Halloween because of being in the modified stage 2 or being in the hot spots. So that might change by the end of in the coming days. Who knows? But according to Dr. Magani, she's outlined a number of great practices, safe practices for families and for people to provide candies and treats for children. Things like, making sure that you are physical distancing, you're wearing your mask outside your Halloween mask when you're out, making sure that the candies and treats that you're leaving out are in individual bags to eliminate kids putting their hands in buckets over and over again, and just being smart by physical distancing and being safe. And we hope that everybody does have a chance to take part in this. You maybe not go as far as normally you would on a given year with your kids, but to be as safe as possible. COVID-19 has really changed our lives. Here in town, there's no Santa Claus parade, and we've had to change the way we do a lot of things. And let's just try to do the best that we can to be safe, to give our kids a good Halloween, to give them a little bit of sense of normalcy for the kids young and old. I know that there's a few of us around this table that enjoy a chocolate or a candy treat or two. So that information can be found at the Halton website, halton.ca/COVID-19. And like I said, that's from our medical officer of health, Dr. Magani from Region of Halton. So good information for parents who might be looking at making plans for this coming week for Halloween. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cluett. Councillor Best.
Councillor Best, you just have to unmute.
Getting late. 2 items. One, the regional official plan review, the comments. If anyone has any interested parties or groups, that deadline is October 30th for comments. November 19th, the next regional council meeting after this one, regional council will be dealing with a number of requests and recommendations from staff. So stay tuned. It's going to be a long process. The other item coming to this regional council on Wednesday is the first steps to the development of the Allendale property. So stay tuned on that one as well. The region is looking at spending about $500,000 to do the technical studies, and hopefully they'll be ready for any shovel-ready projects the federal or provincial government has in terms of assisted housing and long-term care, because something that's sorely needed in this community. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Hamid or Councillor Melboof, either one of you gentlemen, anything under regional update?
Nothing for me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, not getting any indication. So with that, that takes care of that. Next item is statements by any member of council, anything coming up in all of our exciting lives. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Councillor Best, I see Councillor Best. What's exciting?
Well, may not be exciting, but just had an AMO meeting with some cabinet ministers today, and it's one thing that asking staff if we have any shovel-ready projects that could be ready at a moment's notice, because I understand from federal and provincial colleagues that there may be some more announcements soon for very short-term projects. So if we have anything ready, I'd hope that staff would get them going, and if not, could we have them on deck ready to go? Because as we've seen with the previous infrastructure programs, they have a very short turnaround time.
And I think we're always on the watch for that, and I think we're positioned reasonably well here in the town of Milton to take advantage of those dollars as well for projects that's not only wanted but needed, especially if they're needed. We definitely will take advantage of them for sure. So yeah, thanks, Councillor Best. Councillor Best, any further? Any other member of council, any statements, any comments that they wish to make at this point in time? We are just about winding it up. Councillor Ali, I'm sorry.
Your Worship, I just wanted to wish everybody a very happy Halloween.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll be not meeting until after that. Exactly. It's called trick or treat. Keeping in mind what Councillor Clute had mentioned before, if we're going to be sending young and or old out, be careful on it. Take precautions for sure. So. With that, a resolution moved by Councillor Hamid and second by Councillor Best, and be it resolved that bylaws numbers 080-2020 through including 087-2020 be read, passed and numbered, and that the mayor and the town clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaws and seal them with a seal of the corporation, and that they be engrossed in the bylaw book. Are there any questions on the reading of these bylaws? Being none, unless I see a hand go up like this, I will assume that everyone's in favor of these bylaws being read. I don't see any hands going up, so it's carried. Di Lorenzo, before I adjourn this meeting, Councillor Di Lorenzo, go ahead.
It was a comment on any news, and I put it out too late. I just want to confess to town council, I do have a serious addiction. It's related to haunted houses and Halloween. But
yeah, we all were aware of that, including myself, Councillor Di Lorenzo, and I thank you very much for being in that position.
So I am seeking help, and I'm not doing the Milton Haunted House for obvious reasons. I was joking with one of my fellow council members that I am suffering withdrawal symptoms because Halloween is a significant holiday in my family and my group, specifically towards the event we do every year that many councils are a part of. And I've not posted or said anything about it this year, just because I don't want to think about it. Obviously, it's not appropriate to do this year. But I just want to thank the many council members. I think we have a majority on council who have actively volunteered and participated in this fundraiser for the hospital every year. So all of council almost has been involved in this. And the only comment I'll make is I'm really hoping next year COVID's over and we can come back to a healthy normal, at least by October 2021. And we'll see. Sorry for taking council's time on that. I just felt I had to confess.
No, Councillor Di Lorenzo, you're to be recognized for the work that you have done over the past number of years with regards to that haunted house that usually takes place, of course, at the Milton Mall. And not only you and some of my colleagues has been involved for quite a number of years, but a lot of the volunteers is out there in the community that's helped make this a success. And I know not only the kids, the young people, but the adults have fun going through that. And of course, as you know, I've gone through that haunted house every year that you've had it. And I'm always surprised the work and the thought that goes into that. So it definitely will be missed this year, that's for sure. And look forward definitely on having it come up next year. So thank you very much for all the work and the effort that you put into it. It's acknowledged. So, and I'm sure the community will miss it as well. Councillor Clute?
Yeah, just very quickly, if Councillor Di Lorenzo is interested in jonesing a little bit to decorate a house, we're going to be starting to decorate our house in the next couple of days. So feel free to come over with some of your supplies. That way my street can have the best haunted house on the street. So.
See, Councillor Clute, you're getting a thumbs up. You can expect as soon as this meeting is adjourned, he'll be over there getting things set up for you there. So with that, members of council, this meeting is now adjourned. Members of council, stay safe, stay healthy. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you and good night.